Self-love is not soft. It's the missing infrastructure for every success in your life, including your career. Hello, beautiful people. It's Lulu, and this is episode 52. I'm still navigating the challenge I shared with you in episode 51. And today I'm practicing what I teach by showing up in a way that honors where I am, by giving myself permission to show up differently depending on my season. I hope it gives you, the listener, permission to do the same in your life without fear of judgment or rejection. Because here's what I want you to know. My mental health journey does not disqualify me from building a business or having insight into sustainable success. It informs it, and the same is true for you. Whatever you're navigating does not disqualify you from your goals. It deepens your capacity to achieve them with integrity. This week, instead of a solo episode, I'm sharing a conversation I had as a guest on Deb Boulanger's podcast, Life After Corporate. Now, before you think this is only for entrepreneurs, it is not. This conversation is for anyone building a career, pursuing goals, navigating workplace challenges, or trying to create something meaningful in any area of their life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're climbing the corporate ladder in a full-time role, working in a creative field, or figuring out your next professional move, this applies for you. Deb focuses on the holistic side of professional life and calls entrepreneurship a spiritual journey. But really, any career path becomes a spiritual journey when you're committed to doing it with integrity and self-awareness. And in this conversation, we go deep. We talk about why self-love is the foundation, not the reward for success. We explore my whole framework and how it sustained me through the brutal transition from full-time corporate to full-time entrepreneurship during a mental health crisis. We also explore the love framework as a way to connect back to yourself when everything feels uncertain. And we discuss why self-love isn't just for your personal life. It belongs in your work, your career, your professional impact, every area where you're wanting to build sustainable success. This conversation matters because too many people still believe self-love is separate from professional success. They believe that it's something you do in your quiet time, but has no place in the boardroom, the client meeting, the performance review, or the business strategy. And that's exactly why so many of us are exhausted, depleted, and running on empty while chasing achievement. If you've ever felt like you've had to choose between being successful and being kind to yourself, this episode is for you. If you've ever wondered whether self-love has any real place in your career or professional life, this episode is for you. And if you're simply exhausted from trying to do it all while treating yourself like the least important person in your life, this episode is definitely for you. Before we begin, if you think someone in your life needs to hear this conversation, please share this episode with them. It makes a bigger difference than you realize. So let's dive into this honest, rich conversation with Deb about building success on self-worth, not burnout.
Welcome to Life After Corporate, my friends. And we've talked in the past about entrepreneurship being a spiritual journey, that it is really an identity reclamation, I would say, of reclaiming who you are. And today's guest is going to share a journey with us on her perspective of that reclamation and what she's done. Her name is Lulu Essey. She is an executive creative director, speaker, and host of the Lulu Essey podcast. She's also a certified life coach who helps driven professionals build sustainable success. External achievement means nothing without genuine self-love as the foundation. In fact, according to Lulu, this is the missing infrastructure to success. Her global journey from South Africa through Asia to now New York informs her work guiding people from all walks of life through her love framework and passionate advocacy for mental fitness. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Lulu Essey.
Thank you so much, Deb. I'm genuinely thrilled to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
I'm thrilled too. And we have not met before. Usually the people who are on the show are people who I've met in real life. And there was something that really grabbed me. And it's, your unique perspective about this personal transformation of what you call self-love. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. But first, we're super curious. What is your life after corporate journey? What led you from being an executive creative director in corporate to launching your life coaching practice?
Okay, so this is a really layered story. I was doing both at the same time. And I was very transparent with my workplace about that so that I didn't want to ever feel like I was hiding anything. And then things started to shift and the company had a restructure and I lost my full-time job. But at the same time, I was having a full-blown mental health relapse. Now, living 30 years with severe bipolar, I've had bumps in the road. I've had hitches. This was not one of those times. This was a full-blown relapse. So I lost my job, my full-time employment, along with my identity and my accolades and everything that came with that. I was having a mental health crisis, and now I was facing my entrepreneurship staring right down at it. And it was something that I had envisaged would happen, slowly. And now it was right in my face. So that was the kind of how I came to be an entrepreneur. And I truly believe, and this is not just empty words, I truly believe that life happens for us, not to us. And actually more than that, I believe that life happens through us. And it was brutal when it happened and how it happened, but it was the best thing that could have happened for me. So I have absolutely no regrets about it.
Yeah. So congratulations for emerging out the other side. And for people who don't know, if you don't know anyone in your life who suffers with a bipolar disorder, that it's incredibly debilitating. And so I'm very curious to learn, how did you navigate through that process? Because entrepreneurship, I can imagine it was crushing, losing your job at the same time you're having this major relapse. And then, looking at the daunting, somewhat uphill climb of building a business from scratch, emotionally and psychologically. How did you get through that?
So, I had begun this journey many, many years ago, discovering that self-love is not just a nice to have, but it is what I call the missing infrastructure. And it's the foundation of everything. And to really pull the curtain back, part of my disorder involved self-harm. And there was an incident when I was in Hong Kong where that happened. And I had a moment where I realized I'm worth so much more than this. And it was a profound moment of self-compassion. So that's where the journeys really kind of started to take hold. And I started to look at, on the one hand, I have all these external awards and the titles and everything, but inside I feel empty and desolate. And I started to connect the dots. And And that's how my self-love practice kind of began. And I call it a practice, Deb, because it's something that we work on every day. There's no graduation point. And then, of course, there's the realities of dealing with a mental health disorder. And for many, many years, I kept it a secret because I didn't feel like society at that time was ready. Mental illness was a very different landscape to what it is now. Now it's openly discussed. There's a lot less stigma. But when I was really climbing the corporate ladder, it was still very, very stigmatized. So it was like, how do I cope? And it was a combination of medication, different therapy modalities, and it was hard. It was ravaging. But once I connected that side of the treatment with the self-love, then things really started to flow. It's not like, it wasn't a magic wand. There's no such thing. But it started to really deliver the kind of results that I could feel on the inside, that weren't attached to what the world was telling me, but were attached to kind of how I felt about myself.
I love this because, I think your story will resonate with a lot of people because whatever the reason is that we leave corporate, whether it's just burnout and I don't mean just burnout, whether
Yes.
it's, burnout or tragedy or other things happening in your life outside of you, the ability to look inward and find a new reservoir of strength and inner support is something that I think not all entrepreneurs go through, but those
Yes.
who really feel grounded or connected to entrepreneurship as a form of personal development and spiritual development, um, come to, because I know a lot of people like us who really do feel that it's the beauty of the transformation in this change and the switch of identity. So I'm
Yes.
wondering, where was the seed? Where was the birth of that self-love? Did it come from putting yourself in an external environment? Was it like a Byron Katie moment when, she realized that, oh, when I believe my thoughts, I suffer. When I don't believe my thoughts, I don't suffer. Was it
Yes.
inside or something you experienced?
Well, it was a combination of both. And so I always talk about the fact that I thought that there was something wrong with me because I didn't have an epiphany moment, a defining moment. I had several moments over the years that compounded. And when you read books and you hear stories of kind of teachers, they will talk about one defining moment. And there wasn't one. There were a series of defining moments that forced me in a way to look inward. The one in Hong Kong that I mentioned with the self-harm was, I think, the most profound moment. And, I think I would just want to say something about self-love so people don't get confused. I love the fact that you call entrepreneurship a spiritual journey because that really resonates with who I am. And I think, Brené Brown did so much and does so much amazing work on vulnerability, and she's made it acceptable in the cultural lexicon. We understand it. We embrace it more. Self-love is still something people actively repel. And there's a huge cringe factor around self-love. And I wanted to talk about that in relation to entrepreneurship because people often think self-love is the reward for success, where it isn't. It's the foundation of success. And people also think that I have these goals, I have these revenue targets, I have an empire that I want to build. How is self-love? Give me strategies. Give me the 12 steps. How is self-love going to help me? And what I'm saying is those strategies, those steps are absolutely valuable. But when you start with self-love as the foundation, that the rest becomes sustainable. And it's not like you building on quicksand. because because business success is going to fluctuate.
Yeah.
Your revenue is going to fluctuate. Your likes, your followers, your views, that's going to fluctuate. Your self-worth, your self-love is non-negotiable.
Yes. And it's sustaining. And it's so funny because so much of our love for ourselves is conditional. And
Completely.
it comes from, how you were raised, and certainly in the corporate environment, love in corporations is very conditional on, how well you performed the last 6 months, the last year. And it's the biggest gift of entrepreneurship to tap into that well of faith and trust and love. So let's talk about how you overcome that resistance to going there. And we know it's a counterintuitive truth, and that people push it away as being not as important as the KPIs or the other measurements of success. So how do you tap into that inner reservoir?
So I tap into it through consistency. I think that is the key to everything, and to acknowledging that this is a hard path. It's not a difficult path there is a difference between things that are hard and that are difficult. And I do it consistently. And I think consistency is the key there. I can't practice self-love on the days that I feel like it. It's easy to do it on the days where I've got the client and my views are amazing on social media. It's hard on the days where I feel like externally I'm failing. But it comes with a willingness to be uncomfortable, to have that awareness without judgment. And I think that that is very powerful, Deb, because we judge ourselves so harshly, but we need the awareness. So how do you have the awareness without the judgment? You have to practice.
Yeah. So let's talk about the practice. What does your daily practice look like?
So my daily practice, I am one that believes in, what do I need today? And what I need today might look different to what I need. So there's a level of flexibility in my practice. So I have discipline and I have intuition. So I have a daily routine, which I follow certain steps. And that is where the discipline comes in. And that is, I'm not waiting to feel like doing something to do it. I do it anyway. But I also know myself well enough to know when I need grace, when I need space. So it's about the foundational things. It's about sleep. Sleep is a big one for people who have mental health issues. However, there is so much stress around sleep lately, because sleep has become the biggest metric that we measure. And, for those of us who struggle with sleep, it's causing anxiety. But anyway, I digress. Sleep, nutrition, daily movement, and practices that nourish myself. And when I catch myself in a moment of self-criticism, when a client doesn't go through and that voice starts, is just noticing it, just bringing awareness to it. And it's almost like stepping outside of yourself. I call it being the kind witness.
Yes.
And it's being the kind witness to what's happening in my life. So, and then I have various tools and frameworks that I use to help me. One of the most significant that I wanted to share with you is what I call the whole framework. And I developed this, and I think that this will be helpful to your listeners, because this was my lifeline when I transitioned from corporate to full-time entrepreneurship. And basically, it's an acronym that I break down. And the starting with the W, it's worth comes from within, not external validation. So you don't tie your worth to metrics. And I think for entrepreneurs, it's what I said earlier: your success will fluctuate, your worth does not.
Right.
And then the H is for our humanity, is what connects us beyond our titles and achievements. So it's about that willingness to show up messy. And, people talk about the messy middle. I'm not talking about that. Life is messy beginning to end, and it's being comfortable in that messiness, and it's being your authentic self and having the courage to show up authentically. I've had podcasts where my podcast is unedited. So if I make a mistake or I mispronounce a word, it stays in there. And that's my way of sharing my humanity with my listeners. And then the O is openness to multiple identity sources creates resilience. And I think that's really important. We have an identity beyond our identities as entrepreneurs. So it's embracing the multiple sides of ourselves, and whatever those other identities may be, don't measure them or judge them. Embrace them, because that will give you the resilience you need when the business is not exactly where you'd like it to be. And then the L, and I love this one, Deb. L is legacy is about impact, not achievements.
Oh, that is so good. Let's unpack that one just for a moment before we move on to E.
Sure.
Legacy versus achievements. Talk about that.
Sure.
Impact.
So impact for me is and it's my mission in life is to impact at scale. I want to impact as many lives as possible. However, I know that I have impacted one life. And that to me is a legacy that I am proud of. And especially as entrepreneurs, our impact, we get the opportunity to impact lives on a daily basis. So what do we choose that impact to be? And the other thing is, legacy is often associated with men. It's like male legacy, and it's like, no. It's legacy is about all of us. And it's about that legacy about how we leave people feeling. That's the impact that I'm talking about, beyond the business impact.
Yes. Yeah. Like, what is that quote? A tribute to Maya Angelou. People
Yes,
will forget what you said. They'll always remember how you made them feel.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's placing value on that, because the stock market can't take that away. AI can't take that away. And that's the other thing to think about is impact in a world of AI where, where we feel like our value is being diminished. We can still have an impact, a positive impact, a loving impact, a kind impact on those around us. And it's meaningful. Yes, we want the dollars and we want the KPIs to be met and all of those things. I'm not saying that we don't want that. I want that. So legacy, something that your revenue can't touch or change. And then E is engagement beyond work expands our identity. So engagement beyond our work life. And I think this is especially significant for entrepreneurs, because there are no lines anymore. Your life becomes your work. But what are you embracing beyond your work and your life as an entrepreneur? Because that's what's going to give you that resilience and, that the necessary tools to see you through the dark times, because the dark times will come. And that's another thing I wanted to say is self-love is not about avoiding the dark, because it's going to happen anyway, but it's about being equipped to find your way through.
Yes. There's so much richness in this conversation. And, if people only knew what the practice would deliver, it's such a worthy investment of time. Like I would spend all my time in my spiritual practice if I could,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because my work doesn't define my identity. The money doesn't define my identity. The passion, the legacy, the impact, that is part of my identity, part of my mission and purpose. But the play and the devotion to self-love and whatever, higher power, whether it's your higher self, source, whatever you call it, the universe, connecting to forces that are just bigger than your mind,
Yes.
is so vitally important, because otherwise, you're just twisted in a web of thinking that most often doesn't serve you, certainly doesn't elevate your mood or your vibration. It's something that brings you down. So
Completely.
I love that you shared that.
Completely. And Deb, I just wanted to just for those who are skeptical, say, people let's think about this in terms of a global scale. Because
Mhm.
people can tend to think, and this kind of goes back to the cringe factor and that people find it repellent. Okay, that's fine in your quiet time when you're alone. But what about global impact? What about policy change? What about the geopolitical crisis that we're in
Mhm.
at the moment? You want to tell me to love myself when the world is burning? How's that going to
Mhm.
make a difference?
Right.
And it does make a difference because it gives you back your agency and your power. It's not going to give you the power to change policy. We are not in that position, but that does not mean we are completely helpless.
Right.
So it, 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 it equips you to make a difference in your life. And when you make a difference in your own life, that has a ripple effect. And
Yes.
it's that ripple effect that can make a difference on a community level, on a relationship level, and eventually on a global level. So this is not just confined for the neat little spaces of personal development and self-growth. These ideas have impact on a global level. But people don't want to go there because it makes them uncomfortable to have to look inside and take true accountability.
Well, it gives you perspective because everything else is fear and scarcity based, right?
Completely.
So you cannot operate from a whole perspective if you're distracted by all the things happening in the outside world, all the catastrophes. I don't know how people survive who are focused on all of the things that are wrong. And yes, we make an impact, but we make a conscious impact through understanding where we can move the needle, where can we be of service, where can we contribute the most, and complaining about it, being afraid of it, fear mongering, scaring others about the doomsday scenarios are is not going to affect the future. Operating differently, coming from a different place and coming from a place of inspired wisdom is where you can make the most impact. And
Completely.
I know you have another framework, and I'm a framework lover, so thank you for bringing your frameworks to the
Of
conversation
course.
today. This one is called Love,
Yes.
and it is a practical tool for sustainable transformation. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And you'll see that there's a thread through my frameworks. I can use different words, but in essence, it's the same. And one thing I do want to say about these frameworks, all of the tools that I offer my clients and I talk about on my podcast is make them your own. Don't follow them exactly as I've outlined them because your circumstances are unique. Your life is unique. And that's more important to me that you take these and absorb them and adjust them and make them your own. But coming back to the love framework. So, L stands for listen to your inner voice without judgment. And I've
Yeah.
spoken about this, it's like that awareness, but not the judgment and the criticism. And just being aware of that inner voice is a practice in and of
Mhm.
itself. What is that inner critic saying? And it's non-stop. It can be relentless unless we're willing to kind of give it the time and attention because it's pointing us to something, you know. Um, o, o stands for own your worth. Now. Own your worth now, where you are, with the debt, with the lack of followers, with the loans that are yet to be paid. It's not that worth, again, it's not conditional. So I'm enough now. Not the rest of the world is like, I will be enough when I will be worthy when. So it's owning that now. The V is value your journey, even the messy parts, because we tend to place value on the good parts of our lives and forget about the lessons and the gifts that the hard times bring us. So it's really valuing, and it's about the uniqueness of our path. I think we're so conditioned nowadays with social media and influencers that we get into comparison. my path needs to look like your path or so-and-so's path. No, it's different. The journey's different. So it's finding value and appreciation for that. And then E is something that I practice daily, and that's embracing imperfect action. So I'd rather do something um, imperfectly than waiting for conditions to be perfect, because they never will be. I've looked for perfect conditions
And
everywhere.
that's for all the perfectionists out there listening. And I know you're here because I see
Yes,
you every day,
yes,
waiting until the next thing, waiting until the next refinement. And imperfect action is what entrepreneurship is all about. Um,
completely.
and as we start wrapping up the conversation here, we think that the outer success creates the inner satisfaction when it's absolutely the opposite. Faith plus trust is greater than hustle and grind.
And we live in such a hustle and grind world, Deb. But when you have the courage, to find that worth within, and like I said, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard, and it's a daily practice, but no one can take that away. And when your business dips, which it will, that will stay with you, and that will sustain you. That will give you that emotional resilience. So I wholeheartedly support what you've just said.
I look forward to meeting you in person in New York one day.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you didn't close a client this month at all, or if you made $20,000 or $30,000 in revenue. It
Yes,
makes no difference as to your personal value or who you are. It might make
completely.
things a little bit uncomfortable. And, it's informing. Oh, isn't that interesting? I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now because I didn't do anything to generate revenue this month. So it's informing. And then you can make a different decision the next week, today, because you have agency, you have free will. So it's
Yes,
all in your hands, but it means nothing whether or not you're rich, you're poor, you're successful, you're struggling. It means nothing about your self-worth.
completely, completely. And it doesn't mean that we stop wanting to achieve our goals, or that we need to make our goals smaller. You can still have I do. I have huge goals that I want to accomplish, but I call it being grounded and having grace. So it's being happy with where I'm at and still reaching for more.
Yes, 1000%. I'm so grateful for this conversation, Lulu. Really, it's been fun and inspiring to share the stage, to share the life after corporate stage with someone like you who really embodies that value of self-love over external acceptance and, adhering to other people's determinations of worth. And that is the trauma that we get in corporate. Our the we call them our family, right? Our corporate family, but it is not a family. It's a
No,
very
it's
dysfunctional family
yes,
that is more punitive than supportive. And
yes.
so I want to appreciate and thank you for being so transparent and sharing your story with us today.
And Deb, if I could just say one last thing before we wrap up. For people who have mental health issues, it's often a deterrent from embracing a life of entrepreneurship, because it comes with a lot of stress. And stress is a big trigger for people who have severe mental health challenges. And I just want to say, I'm not a clinician. I've never claimed to be, but I know from my own personal experience, there's a way through. So don't let that scare you. There is a way through, and it's small steps.
Small steps. I just got chills. I've got goosebumps on my arms right now. Thank you for sharing that, Lulu.
Of course. I hope that conversation landed for you the way it did for me when we recorded it. You know, one of the things Deb said that really stayed with me was about faith and trust being greater than hustle and grind. And I think that's such a beautiful way of describing what happens when you build from self-love instead of self-depletion. That's what the whole framework and the love framework that we explored in this conversation are really about. Building from fullness, not emptiness. The world will tell you that self-love is a luxury, a nice to have, something you get after you've achieved enough, earned enough, proven enough. But I'm here to tell you from lived experience, from 30 years navigating severe bipolar disorder while building an award-winning creative career, from losing everything and having to rebuild, self-love is not the reward for success. It's the foundation that makes success sustainable. And sustainability matters because what's the point of achieving everything you dreamed of if you're too depleted, too burnt out, too disconnected from yourself to actually enjoy it? Your worth does not fluctuate with your metrics. Your business revenue might go up and down. Your follower count might change. Your client roster might shift. But your worth, that is non-negotiable. And when you anchor into that truth, everything else becomes more possible, not less. So here's my invitation to you. What would change if you treated self-love as the essential infrastructure instead of an optional indulgence? What would shift in your business, your relationships, your health, your daily decisions if you truly believed that how you treat yourself sets the blueprint for how others treat you? You don't need all the answers right now. You just need to be willing to ask the question. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to share this episode with the people who need to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast so you never miss these conversations when you need them most. You can also watch this episode on my YouTube channel, where you'll also find the full video and shorts with bite-sized insights. And if you'd like to receive my weekly newsletter, just email me, lulu@luluessey.com. Next week, I'll be back with a solo episode. And yes, I'll be here because showing up in whatever form that takes is part of my practice too. Until then, remember, self-love isn't luxury. It's not soft. It's the most strategic decision you can make for every area of your life, including your business. What comes from the heart reaches the heart. And today, with deep respect for your journey and your willingness to build something meaningful while honoring your humanity, this comes straight from my heart to yours.